Okay. All right. So yeah, I think we can start the session now. Thank you everybody for making the time to attend today's session. As you know, today is the third in a three-part series that is dedicated to the discussion regarding advancing library visibility in Africa. Just a brief catch-up or recap, if you like. So we had the first webinar which focused on a study we conducted with the aim of trying to understand what perceptions development organizations have about libraries, because we know, or we have the understanding that many of the roles of the development organizations are very similar to the roles that libraries are performing or undertaking. But unfortunately, evidence is showing that they really do not consider libraries as partners or potential partners when it comes to implementing their various goals and objectives. So we needed to understand what their perceptions were. And so the first webinar focused on that. And then the second webinar, after getting understanding from the first study, which is the development organization study, we also wanted to understand the existing capacity of libraries relating to collection of data and using that data for advocacy, and using that data also to attract partners. And then, so that webinar was, last week's webinar focused on the findings, and for each of these findings, there were recommendations. We decided to have this third webinar as a panel discussion to allow for stakeholders to give us reactions on these recommendations we've talked about, and then also to tease out some other recommendations as possible and to get feedback from them. So this is why we are having today's webinar. This is just a brief recap. So for those who have been with us from the beginning, from webinar 1, thank you. For those who are joining us for the first time, you are very welcome, and we hope that at least a little recap I gave brings you up to speed. All right, so my name is Stanley. I'm the research coordinator at AFLIA. I work with a group or team on this project that I just talked about, and Dr. Joel Sam, who is a director for research at AFLIA, is part of the team. We also have our collaborators from the Tasha group, and I must mention that the project is being implemented as a partnership between AFLIA and Tasha, which is a research group in the University of Washington, Seattle. And so we have Dr. Jason Young and Renee, who have been, enlightening us with the findings of the initial studies from webinar 1 and webinar 2. They will be part of the panel here today to give us some context where needful, and then also, if possible, give some follow-up questioning. All right, so welcome everybody. We also have Chris Joasis, who is the team leader, and Bree, all from Seattle. And then let's move to our August panelists. So we decided to draw panelists from Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and Western Africa, at least to reflect, if for nothing at all, the regional balance and representation, and also given the uniqueness of these library systems within Africa, I believe that their feedback will be useful in terms of implementations of these suggestions, and then also with regards to whatever feedback that we'll be able to receive from them, So we have from the National Library of South Africa, we have Mr. Andrew McLaughty, who is a director for the Conditional Grants Project Management Office at the NLSA. I must mention that initially it was going to be Director Kepi Madumo who was going to attend, but unfortunately he has taken ill, And so request was for Andrew to represent him. And Andrew has been working with us on the project for quite some time. So I think he's a best fit. And then we also have in our midst the CEO for Ghana Library Authority, Mr. Hayford Sian, who is also going to be one of our panelists representing the Ghana Library Authority and, if you like, the West African region. And then we have Mr. Jack Wafula, acting CEO for KNLS, Kenya National Library, also representing Eastern Africa and Kenya. Yeah, so before I continue, I'll just like for them to say hi to the audience, maybe introduce themselves properly, and share one or two about the expectations they have for today. And if possible, on a very lighter note, let us know what their hobbies are. Then we jump into the discussions. All right, so I'll call on Andrew, if you can introduce yourself. Let's know what your expectations for today is, and something small about your hobby.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Andrew Malotle, and I'm from the National Library of South Africa, a director for LIS Special Projects Conditional Grant. This conditional grant deliverables are aimed to enhance service delivery in public and community libraries. That is through the capacity building. The NLSA conducts capacity building training and workshops, and we also render ICT support to libraries, as well as research mentorship for LIS sector. Regarding hobbies, Stanley, I like music. Yeah, I think I'm an African, and I really enjoy the beat. That's it about my hobbies.
Thank you.
And then my expectations is that really we want to see ourselves taking libraries forward, especially in terms of development and aligning with national imperatives, aligning with SDGs, and then also the AU Agenda 2063. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. And then I would make a suggestion. Andrew, probably the next time, I'm sure our audience would like to see your handsome face, and to connect with you properly. So maybe the next time you can engage your camera. Let's invite Mr. Hayford Sian from the Ghana Library Authority, the CEO, to say just a few words, introduce himself and expectations for today. And maybe we get to hear your hobby. So, Mr. Sian, if you can unmute, because you are muted.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Stanley. And good afternoon, everyone. As Stanley mentioned, my name is Hayford Sian, and I'm the Chief Executive for the Ghana Library Authority. I've been in this role for the past 3.5 years. And the Library Authority is the agency responsible for connecting Ghanaians to knowledge resources. We manage 97 branches as of today across the country. And of course, we provide information services in all the 16 regions of Ghana. I look forward to an engaging discussion this afternoon. I have not been able to join the last 2 sessions, but I believe this will be a very exciting one to join. Talking about my hobby, I love cycling, and that's what I do for leisure, beside, of course, reading. Thank you.
Great, of course. Every librarian likes to read. Thank you. All right, so let's invite Mr. Wafula, CEO for KNLS, to also share some introductory comments and expectations for today and your hobby.
Thank you so much, Stanley, and my fellow panelists who have joined in for this session. Like my fellow panelists have said, I've also not been privileged to participate in the other 2 sessions that have been held. and I'm really, really excited to be part of the discussion and the conversations today. My name is Jack Wafula. I'm the acting CEO of Kenya National Library Service, which is a state corporation established by an act of parliament in Kenya with a mandate to establish and promote reading in Kenya. I'm really, really excited to be part of this conversation today. I look forward to having a very, very engaging and live conversation. And broadly, my expectation is for libraries in Africa to take their rightful place in fostering development in this wonderful continent of ours. I have two hobbies. Naturally, the first one is I love reading, and the other one is I love cars. I'm a big fan of cars, fast cars, nice cars. I really love cars and love driving. Thank you, Stanley.
Wonderful.
Back to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wafula. Yeah, an interesting taste for cars. Yeah, so let me just quickly mention before we enter into the discussions that as we start the discussions, if you have any follow-up questions or if you have any question at all, just use the Q&A feature, and I would give the panelists the opportunity to respond to them. I'd also like to repeat that the recordings to all the webinars from webinar 1 till now will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. And so even if you have missed any of them, please find time to visit the YouTube channel to recap and to get more insights about this webinar series. We are going to be asking our dear panelists a couple of questions. They are going to share their views, and this relates with the recommendations, as I mentioned, the recommendations from the 2 studies that we had conducted relating to development organizations' perceptions, and then also what we feel we wanted to understand regarding the capacity for libraries with regards to data collection and use and dissemination. So I need to mention that at the end of the study, we had recommendations for almost all stakeholders. We had recommendations for the researchers. We had recommendations for the development organizations. We also had recommendations for the library systems themselves, and then some recommendations for the library support organizations. But for the purposes of today's discussion, we want to focus on the recommendations that we had comparing the 2 studies for library systems. And then we would give our panelists the opportunity to react to them, tell us what they think about it and all that. So you'll get to know more about that. But then I would just like to mention again, because I know that we have other library support organizations here, even though the audience or the purpose of this discussion does not cover that, I think I can call them out at least to make things very easy for you, because we all have responsibilities and roles to play. So from the recommendations of the 2 studies, the researchers are suggesting that the library support organizations must support efforts to network with development organizations directly. In this case, we are saying that they should consider organizing networking events for library representatives or putting libraries into direct contact with development organizations. And this is something to chew on, because I know we have some reps from the library support organizations here. Another suggestion for you is to continue to build the capacity of libraries to connect with development organizations. Consider supporting skills such as marketing, storytelling, basic analyzing, and reporting of quantitative and qualitative data, applying for grants, and writing proposals with a focus on using data effectively. This is also something critical for library support organizations to consider and see to its implementation. And then the last, which is to continue to network and advocate for libraries at the local level. All right, so that's with that out of the way, let's zoom straight in. I'm going to stop sharing the screen momentarily so that we can start with the questioning, but these will be the recommendations that we are going to be focused on and each one of the panelists will have opportunity to react to them. But to set the tone, I would like to ask the first question. And this is a question I'm sure that normally or is often asked. And so would like to hear from our directors here, if they can briefly describe the role that libraries play in the development of your country. This time we want to make it a bit more personal. So in Kenya, in Ghana, in South Africa, what do you think is the role of libraries in development? Anyone who's ready to go can start.
Thank you, Stanley. Our facilitator, I want to start by saying from the National Library of South Africa, we view the role of library as to promote literacy development that will contribute to socio-economic development towards the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also towards the achievement of the NDPs, the National Development Plan, and also the AU Agenda 2063. Literacy is a fundamental human right enshrined in the Universal Human Rights and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa in this case. And then libraries are also a social hubs that promote social cohesion. And libraries, we take them as playing a role in also promoting social cohesion. Libraries advance the creation and preservation of local language, that is our indigenous languages, and also they preserve local knowledge, and thus advancing cultural wealth of a nation. Libraries respond and support all developmental ecosystem, as well as economic value chain within the literacy development.
Andrew, if you can turn on your camera. All right.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I ended by saying libraries respond to the support of all developmental ecosystem and the economic value chain within the literacy development.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Any thoughts from Mr. Wafula? What do you also say regarding the role of libraries in development?
Thank you so much, Stanley. And in addition to what my fellow panelist has indicated, and narrowing down specifically to our country, Kenya, I want to say that the importance of libraries in development cannot be underscored, and this transcends all spheres of life. In Kenya, libraries have been at the forefront of providing relevant information to the entire spectrum of the Kenyan population. You may be aware that as a country, we have an economic blueprint that has been running for well over 15 years now. It's called a Vision 2030, whose objective is to transform Kenya into a middle income country by the year 2030. This economic blueprint has got 3 pillars. One of them is the economic pillar, we have the social pillar and the political pillar. So we see libraries as critical in supporting each of these 3 pillars. When it comes to economic development, libraries play a crucial role in availing relevant information to be digested by all the players under this economic pillar, social pillar, and the political pillar as well. Libraries also serve to play the role of fostering lifelong reading. You may have heard the old cliche that people go to the libraries only to read for exams. But in Kenya, this perception is slowly changing, and we are experiencing cases where people are now beginning to read for enjoyment. People are beginning to read for self-empowerment and just to enlighten themselves and to improve their livelihood. Libraries also support agriculture. Agriculture is is big in Kenya. It's the second biggest contributor to the GDP. And we work closely with the extension officers in ensuring that we disseminate relevant information to support our farmers to improve on their agricultural practices and also link our farmers to the markets, as it were. Libraries also play a very critical role in the space of IT. And we have cases where libraries have actually enabled users to access digital platforms and digital content. This will not ordinarily have been possible, particularly in the rural setup where digital devices are not common. So we are able to link our readers from the rural setups to the globe, if you like, by being able to avail these digital platforms and digital reading content. The current government also has got an economic blueprint for the current 5-year period that is that's running up to 2022, called the Big Four Agenda, that aims at achieving food sustainability, manufacturing, affordable housing, and universal healthcare. And libraries have taken the center stage in ensuring that we support each of these 4 pillars of the current development agenda for the current government. So those are just a few that I want to point out in addition to what my colleague from South Africa has indicated. Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Wafula, extending the role that libraries play in development. Can we hear a word or two from Mr. Sian, from your perspectives as well? Just a minute or two, if you like, please.
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. And I think whatever that I want to say is not too far from what my colleagues have already shared. I could situate it from these 2 angles. For in Ghana, for example, the role that the library plays in the development of this country is ascertained through about maybe 4 different channels. One of them is our static infrastructure that we have, because of course the Ghana Library Authority's overall vision is to connect Ghanaians to knowledge resources. So with your 97 branches or static structures, how do you leverage on it to be able to connect to your citizens the different groups that you have within your population? How do you connect those different population groups to knowledge resources using your static infrastructure? And then the second one is, how do you connect your citizens through your digital infrastructure that you have as a library institution? And then the third is, how do you connect your people through probably your mobile library services that you run? And then the fourth is, how do you connect to the people? Because the information specialists that work within the library spaces, they are the repository of knowledge. I mean, they are walking libraries in themselves, and they provide that opportunity for your citizens to be connected to various knowledge resources. In the area of using our static infrastructure to be able to connect to various group of our citizens, I mean, students across the country use these library spaces to be able to come for their technology training. So you have computers at some of your libraries, and that's where people come to have their digital literacy skills, which was mentioned by my colleague from Kenya, because our library institutions have now become digital literacy centers. And that is one of the things that development partners, I think, are beginning to realize, that the libraries already have the infrastructure, they already have some system going, and they already have the information specialists. So if you want to really embark on any digital literacy intervention, the library is of course the key institution to be able to work with. Then of course you also provide support to business communities, business people that are looking for information. And I always make the point that Accra Central Library, the reference section, when it was established, it was a commercial library to serve the central business district of Accra, and so this role must still find itself, in our operations for us to be relevant to, to the economic development of this country, because business information is quite crucial, data is quite crucial, and the library institution provides that avenue for that information to be channeled to the relevant stakeholders. The libraries has also been a tool for skills acquisition. For the past 2 years now, Ghana, for example, we've been running massive open online courses for over 30,000 Ghanaians to enroll on some of these opportunities. And these people are enrolling on these MOOCs platform, acquiring new skills, and getting new jobs and internships within the country. And that is one of the key roles that we are playing to be able to advance socioeconomic development of this country. And I believe as we go on, we may be able to share more and go much more into details on some of these interventions.
Exactly. And I think it sets the tone for the next question, because from all the feedback received now, we're talking about libraries being dedicated to the social and economic development of the communities that they serve, and which exactly is the case with also the development organizations and their interests. We would like to also find out, because we know that there has been a lot of experience with dealing with development partners over the years. I'm talking about Ghana Library Authority, I'm talking about KNLS, I'm talking about NLSA. We just want to use this opportunity to see if we can get some experience sharing from you relating to KNLS. Can you share some experience with partnering with a particular development organization? And how did you go about establishing that partnership? And what were some of the lessons that you learned from the partnership with, the said partner? If Mr. Wafula can come in with your experiences in that regard, maybe we can start from you.
Thank you so much, Stanley. KNLS has been around for over 50 years as we speak. Over this period, we have been privileged to work with quite a number of partners, but I want just to narrow down to the last 10 years, just so that I can bring it home to the recent engagement that we've had. Over the last 10 years, we've been privileged to work with not less than 10 partners. These include the Book Aid International from UK, the Communication Authority of Kenya, Sports Fund from Kenya here, Electronic Information for Libraries, IFO, the US Embassy, World Reader, Goethe Institute, Microsoft, to name just but a few. Now, I just want to narrow down to the experience we have had with one of these partners, specifically a partner called World Reader. Okay. So World Reader, we are implementing a project called LEAP, that is Libraries E-Reading Activities Partnership, whose objective is to improve access to digital books by equipping the KNLS libraries with digital devices and also availing digital content through the digital devices that they have provided. And secondly, to train our librarians and equip them with the requisite capacity for them to be able to effectively administer these gadgets to the users who patronize our facilities. So how did we strike this partnership? Yeah. Now, the partnership was conceived through a strategic meeting that we had with World Reader. So KNLS and World Reader met. It was in one of these international forum where we attended a conference, and the management from the management team from KNLS and World Reader were able to have the discourse, and that is how the partnership was conceptualized. So World Reader had identified KNLS network for a pilot project on digital reading, while we as an institution in our strategic plan had identified the need to enhance automation for virtual access to information. So the two institutions had a common agenda of enhancing the capacity of public libraries to provide digital content. So we piloted the LEAP project back in 2014, and we did this with 3 libraries to start with. After which we did a project evaluation at the end of the pilot period. And the evaluation proved that the project was viable. And we, together with the world leader, we embarked now on the second phase of the partnership to upscale the project to 61 more libraries so that we're able to cover the entire KNLS network. So data was collected for all these KNLS libraries to enable world leader fundraise on our behalf to be able now to scale up the project. So that gave birth to what we call LEAP 2.0. So LEAP 2.0 was born out of the success stories achieved from LEAP 1.0. And so in 2016, we unveiled this and were able to scale up the project and covered the entire network of 63 libraries that we have. Now, what were the lessons learned? And I want just to narrow down to around 6 or 7 lessons that we learned from this partnership. Number one is that partnerships between public institutions and private institutions are possible. The project was a success due to the collaboration that we had between KNLS, which is a public institution, and World Reader, which is a private entity. So World Reader mobilized funds for equipment, capacity building, and monitoring and evaluation, while the library provided the infrastructure, staff, and also mobilized the community. So that was one of the key lessons, a positive one that we learned. The second one was it is very, very critical to draw an MOU that identifies and defines the roles and responsibilities of each partner right at the onset of the partnership. This is very critical in ensuring that we are able to align the expectations of the two partners, because the donor comes on board with the expectation and the institution has got also its expectation. If you do not align those at the MOU stage, there are bound to be frictions between the two parties, which may end up jeopardizing the overall objective of the partnership. Now, the third lesson learned out of this partnership with the World Reader was that it is very critical to integrate these new initiatives into the existing structure. KNLS as an institution had ongoing programs, had its own systems, and so on and so forth. So when you're onboarding a new partner on board, it is critical that you integrate the aims and objectives, the activities, and the systems within the existing structures. And this was demonstrated vividly when we came to doing the monitoring and evaluation plan, because the M&E plan for the project was a standalone and had not been integrated as part of the existing structure. And as a result, the librarians that we have on board did not prioritize this and did not work better. So we had to rethink that, we had to rework that, and we were compelled now to make the M&E as part of the broader M&E for the institution. And that helped us to achieve the objective of the partnership. The next lesson learned was designing a monitoring and evaluation plan is very key for the successful project implementation. The project was informed by evaluation results from the pilot. So out of the M&E that was undertaken on the pilot project, we were able to deduce strategies and tactics that informed the success of the scaling up and rolling out the project to the remaining 61 branches. And that was very, very critical for us. Another critical lesson learned is it is also very important that we phase out project during the rollout. Because for us, what we did, we rolled out the project first in 3 libraries, and then the remaining 61 libraries, we rolled this out in 3 phases. We did not onboard all the branches at the same time. And that made the project manageable for both the institution in terms of the internal capacity and also the development partner in terms of the resource requirement, because some of these activities could be very costly to implement. Then another very, very critical lesson learned, and this can resonate with most of us, particularly the librarians, it is that there is need for libraries to provide incentive and reward system for librarians to embrace these new initiatives that come on board. Because the pilot project had increased the workload for librarians. Since there was intensive monitoring process that required them to fill monthly evaluation forms. So you can imagine you go to your job description, then a development partner has come on board, and they have come on board with quote unquote added responsibility. So these had not been included in their job description. And during upscaling, we had to mitigate this through capacity building of librarians and also just to incentivize and provide motivation so that now the librarians can feel part and parcel of the project and they don't necessarily feel like it's extra workload on their shoulders. And that is very, very critical. And then the other lesson learned that I would like to share is flexibility while introducing new ideas and initiatives is also important because each library serves a diverse clientele. And therefore, it is not possible to develop similar activities across board. So librarians were given a choice to become innovative when planning for outreach activities for different users. So in a sense, you kind of domesticate and customize some of the programs to suit to the communities that you are serving. And finally, planning for the project sustainability at the beginning is also critical. And I would be hopefully talking a little bit more about this later on during the webinar, because when development partners come on board, we need to think of the space after the exit. How can we entrench, integrate, and make these programs and activities sustainable, even beyond the funding period that we have with the development partners?
Sure, thank you.
So those are the lessons learned. Sorry,
Wonderful.
I've taken a little bit of time.
Thank
but
you,
yes.
Mr. I think
Thanks.
great lessons that we, in fact, will continue from there with the lessons that you've already shared. But if in the next 5 minutes, if Mr. Matlotti, if representing NLSA, if you can also give us some experience with dealing with a particular development organization. How did you strike the deal? What were the lessons that you learned working with the development organizations? And if there were any limitations at all, you can just share these for the benefit of everyone here, Mr. Matlot.
Thank you very much, Stanley. Okay, sharing the experience of South Africa with regard to development partnerships. I must say that we had a very wide spectrum of partners in the past, both international partners such as, we used to have a partnership with Carnegie Corporation of New York, and then the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Mellon Foundation. And then at national level, we had partnerships with government, for instance, the Department of Basic Education with the rollout of DBE, that is the curriculum access to the learners through the libraries and schools. And then we partnered with the private sector, the book industry. There was quite a wide spectrum of partners we had. I want to single out one partnership that we developed with the Telecom Foundation of South Africa. We were able to establish this partnership through the conditional grant, and then the rollout of ICT into libraries. And then Telecom Foundation came on board with regard to the social responsibility program. And we were able to roll out ICT internships to within the public and community libraries. Through this internship program in our partnership with Telkom, the unemployed youth were able to be employed as interns and cyber cadets in libraries. This resulted in ICT skills development. The interns and cyber cadets assisted in upskilling the library users and communities to utilize digital technology. And then the library usage, that was our experience, that the library usage increased in public and community libraries, with people accessing digital technology, accessing internet to seek jobs, learners doing their school projects. So it was quite beneficial to communities at large. We then had other development partners coming on board, such as Net Campus that was providing training, and then also the UKS, Universal Knowledge Systems. They came on board to train our librarians, and also currently we have the Cisco that came on board. With Cisco currently, we have a list of nominees from the provinces. We have nominees, about 10 per province, that will undergo training through Cisco. And these trainees, upon accredited certification, they will then start to to roll out the training to our librarians as well as our communities. So in other words, with these partnerships, we gained enormous benefits with development organization partnerships. So they are really bearing fruits within our communities and within our LIS sector.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Would invite Mr. Hayford Sion to also give and share experiences. I think at this juncture, it's in order to congratulate the Ghana Library Authority. Recently, they were named as the Library of the Year by the London Book Fair International Excellence Award. And I think it's worth celebrating as a testament of the good things that the African libraries are doing to impact community. But let's hear from you, Mr. Hayford. What's your experience? If you can share your experience regarding, let's say, one development organization, how you struck the partnership, how you managed to work with them, what were the lessons in the next 5 minutes, if so, please.
All right. Okay, Stanley, thank you very much. And thank you for the congratulatory message. Okay, so the Library Authority, for many of you that are aware, I mean, we are one of the pioneers within the sub-region when it comes to library development. We celebrated our 70 years anniversary last year, and so we are 71 now. And over the years, of course, we've done a lot of collaboration over the past 70 years with different partners, from Carnegie to all the donor partners that has been mentioned by my colleagues. Ghana Library Authority, some way, somehow, over the past 71 years, have worked with them. However, I will limit my conversation probably around only the past maybe 3.5 years since I've been in charge of this office. And over this period, we've managed to establish both international partnerships and local partnerships to be able to advance the cause of the work that we do, even with also other public service agencies. And probably just briefly, we currently collaborate with UNICEF. We collaborate now with UNESCO. We do projects with Commonwealth of Learning. Of course, IFIL has always been with the Library Authority. We've done projects with Book Aid International. At a corporate level within Ghana, we work with Vodafone, we work with MTN, we work with GIFIC, we work with Huawei, we work with Newmont. And all of these partnerships that we've managed to establish over the past 3 years has been mostly driven also by the fact that a lot of development partners recognize the type of leadership we have at the Library Authority currently in Ghana. And I think that it is very important that as library organizations, we recognize that, development partners, though they recognize the name of your institution and all of that, they look at the leadership who are your governing board members? Who are the members of your management team to be able to drive, to be able to make sure that there's quality assurance and there is also accountability with respect to whatever resources that are advanced to you. And I think that is one of the driving forces, especially for the Library Authority, having someone like Dr. Helena Hassan Asamoah, as the board chairman, and also myself, my role within the NGO sector before taking up this job. I think this has been the driving force for which I will probably emphasize on UNICEF decided to collaborate with the Library Authority, because of course UNICEF has always been in Ghana, they've been around globally, but they recognize that in their work to advance the culture of literacy, to be able to advance the culture of lifelong learning, to be able to advance literacy within the early grade stages of the development of children, they kind of saw that the Library Authority is probably positioned better to be able to drive that agenda. So with UNICEF, I was in South Africa AFRIA program in Durban when I got an email from them that they want me to participate in a program in New York. So as soon as we flew to Ghana, then I went to New York, and they were going to launch this program called Generation Unlimited, and they selected me as a person because they followed my work over the years. They worked with me in my NGO circles, and that now that they thought I was in government or working with the Library Authority, they thought it was really a good avenue for me to be able to help them to scale their project around the country. And out of that engagement we had in New York, now UNICEF is working with us to establish what we call youth engagement centers at our library locations, where our libraries are currently being transformed into centers for youth engagement, to be able to help young people build some soft skills to prepare them for job interviews, make sure that they have access to relevant training programs through massive open online course platforms. This is also beside another support intervention they are offering the Library Authority with respect to the Library Authority being able to use its mobile library services to enter into communities, make book packs available to schools and children, and also be able to undertake various training programs for teachers around the country. And before we even transition to be able to do this early grade program, UNICEF had worked with us to develop a school library management manual, which we've circulated and shared with a lot of development partners. And let me tell you, the first grant, the first resource we got from UNICEF was $5,000. And I told my management members that, you know what, this is how donors behave. They don't know the Library Authority that well. So let us go for it. Even if it is $1,000, you go for it. Then they transitioned to $40,000. And now they are going into hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to support, the Library Authority undertake some of the projects that we are working on. And it is also because over the period of working with them, we've been consistent in delivering on our activities that we set out to do for them. We've also been consistent in sharing our impact report. And that is key because, you see, sometimes in our library operations, our work makes significant impact in the lives of people. And it is important that we make deliberate investment to be able to document some of these impact stories and be able to share with them. We have built within the Library Authority a very strong corporate affairs team that is very strong on using both social media, traditional media, to be able to make sure that our stories are out there for people to read. Within even Ghana, among other public service agencies, we are probably the only agency that sent out monthly newsletter to our stakeholders across the country. And that is one of the things that these donor partners are really keen on, because they want to be able to follow you. They want to be able to monitor whatever that is happening. And also, don't forget that these donors investing in you, they also want recognition. And so for us at the Library Authority, there is no way I will get the opportunity to speak on a media platform and not mention the contribution of IFIL in the work that we do, not mention the contribution of Commonwealth of Learning in the work that we do, or not mention any of the corporate companies, whether Vodafone or MTN, not use that opportunity to be able to mention and recognize them as such. And they really appreciate it, especially when you meet them in conversations and they mention some of these also to you that, oh, we heard you mention our name. I was on TV, I was on live TV, and one of the program officers at UNICEF, sent me a text, oh, Hayford, we just heard you mention our name. And so the donors love that. And so you must be able to give them the due recognition.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can quickly, maybe your last point, then we jump on to the next question, if you don't mind. Your very last point.
No, I was just mentioning the need for us to have clarity with respect to our deliverables. Right. Whichever donor that you are working with, make sure that whatever the end goal is tangible and it is achievable. And that, I believe, will set the tone for a very strong collaboration in future partnerships.
Perfect. So I thank you, everybody, for sharing all these insightful feedback, experiences and all. I think at this moment, we just want to focus and look at the recommendations that we have for the library systems regarding advancing library visibility or regarding promoting partnership or enhancing partnership with development organizations. And I'm sure that many of the lessons that we've shared already, one way or the other, affirms some of these things, but let's hear your direct responses to these. I would call out one. We have the opportunity to respond to one per panel member. So maybe let me start with Andrew in this case. There's a recommendation here that says that for library systems, you must continue to network with development organizations. And especially for international audiences, you must consider promoting the strengths of libraries as community embedded institutions, as hubs for development resources, including the space, the data, and the research. I mean, essentially, we are saying that you must continue to market libraries in these roles. What's your take on this particular recommendation? What do you think about it? Is it something that is really practical? Is it feasible in a sense of NLSA regarding implementing this recommendation? If you can give us your brief reaction to this recommendation, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone.
And if you can share your video, yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone. The recommendations indeed are feasible and practical to implement. We as a national library, we constantly endeavor to attract development organizations and partnerships through networking, and then also promoting library strengths and community embedded institutions and hubs for development. Number one, we provide space for communities and also provide space as public internet access points for patrons. I want to share with you the story because we have documented some of our impact stories. We find several times whereby somebody says, the library is my office. I like that so much. They'll say, proudly say, we are using the library and this library is my office space. This person having a space there as a small business individual, utilizing library to work on his documents and writing his proposals and so on. So they literally stay in the office, which is the library, to do their work. And then with the researchers, for instance, we have researchers worldwide as far as, you name it, Russia, US, UK, and so forth. So we really utilize access to our data and our library collections, to implement, to make sure that we are visible to, nationally and also internationally. We utilize national platforms to market libraries. The national platforms such as the National Commemorative Days, we display our special collections so that we become visible. And also our classics, we call them the indigenous languages classics, which are very popular And it's our flagship program, as well as the flagship project of the Department of Arts and Culture. So we also make sure that we display this during commemorative days. Also, I want to mention, colleagues, that we establish library advocacy groups. This also ensures visibility within our communities. And these people, the advocacy groups, they take ownership of the libraries, even protect the libraries in terms of any threats from outside. So they hold their meetings and become really the friends, the true friends of the library. We organize library events, and then also we advocate libraries as social hubs. The greatest challenge, in conclusion, is that we are unable to reach all communities, most particularly the rural, the deep rural communities. But we endeavor by all means to be visible both nationally and internationally. I thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for the reaction regarding libraries continuing to network with development organizations, promoting their strengths as community embedded institutions and hubs for development. I'll come to Mr. Sian on point 2 later, but I want to have a discussion with Mr. Wafula regarding recommendation 1 and what the reaction is from his point of view. In order to attract development organizations, libraries must consider framing their work relating to their connection with the local community, relating to the attention given to marginalized groups, and relating to the past successes in implementing programs. I think just like you enumerated recently. So, Mr. Wafula, what do you think about this recommendation, for instance? What's your reaction to it? Is it practical? Is it feasible?
Yes, thank you, Stanley. First of all the 4 recommendations are feasible and applicable to Kenya National Library Service. But just to speak to recommendation number 1, it is paramount that libraries are able to frame their work in terms of these 3 areas, because most of these development partners, they have got their own objectives. They have got their own aims, they have got their own goals. So for them to consider and work and support a particular library, the work the library and the programs the libraries are doing have to align to their overall objective. And we realize that most of the development partners would like that real connection to the local community, because let's face it, they come in because they want to touch the lives of that child, that lady, that man at the grassroots. It's no longer about people at the top, but people at the local level. A lot of the development partners would also wish to work with the marginalized groups for obvious reasons, because these people are deemed to be removed from the main stage where activities and where the action is. So they would wish to reach out to these people. They would wish to create impact. They would wish to ensure that these people are supported and these people's lives and livelihoods are elevated so that there is equity and they are at par with the rest of the other communities that are privileged. Lastly, past successes is very important, and I would just echo the sentiments of my colleague Hayford from Ghana. A lot of donors would wish to work with the libraries that can demonstrate that they have succeeded in partnering, succeeded in conducting and implementing programs with other development partners that they have worked with. So it's very, very critical that whatever resources or whatever support you get from the development partner, you apply it objectively, you apply it in a manner that is prudent, and ensure that you do not only meet the resource objectives, but you meet the overall objective. So past successes are very, very critical. And for us, like I shared with through my experience, with the specific development partner that we worked with, we were able to attract more resources by the virtue that we succeeded in the pilot program. So that is very, very critical, and it's really feasible and applicable.
All right.
Thank you, Stanley.
Okay, so thank you very much. We jump to Mr. Hayford. I think in his recent commentary, he talked a lot about documenting what is being done. So if we can take a bite on what your reaction is with regards to libraries taking or collecting quantitative data, especially on usage and user demographics and all that.
Thank you, Stanley. And I think this point is I mean, it's probably too narrow, because I would have wished that this point will just have considered data in general, both qualitative and quantitative data, because especially when you are working, when you want to position yourself as a development organization, you don't have to only rely on quantitative data, which is of course very important, because everybody wants numbers to be able to know the skill of something against whatever, and be able to analyze what it was before and after and all of that. And these data are very critical. But I will want to recommend that we actually look at both qualitative and quantitative in general as a significant tool in being able to communicate and being able to guide our decisions and practices within the public library space. And so, yes, this recommendation is very good, but that will be my additional point to it. I mean, at the Library Authority, we have probably been able to communicate effectively, because one of the key things that I did in 2018 was to be able to take a baseline assessment of the whole public library system within the country, be able to document numbers. And so whenever I get the opportunity to be able to communicate about anything, whether it is the number of books on our shelves, which was very difficult to even come by over a period of years, whether it is being able to consistently have clear-cut numbers with respect to people that are using our various computer systems across the country, whether it is people that are being able to utilize your internet service that you provide, whether it is being able to do your library visit, because until 2018, different libraries have different ways of measuring the number of patrons that utilize their resources. And so when you even aggregate it across the country, you will notice that some regions are performing better than the other. Meanwhile, their system of collecting that data was different. How do you make sure that you have one uniform data collection strategy to be across board, to be able to make sure that whatever that you are reporting can be consistently be at par with whatever comes up in the future? And so these are very important points, and I believe that we need to strengthen, within our library system. And so when Ghana Library Authority, we've just finished what we call a review of our scheme of service. So in Ghanaian public service, scheme of service is what defines the various occupational groups to be able to have a career direction when you come into this organization. What we've embedded now within this scheme of service is to have a research, monitoring, and evaluation unit, which is specifically meant to be able to work with data. So they are the ones that will be responsible for certain instruments for data gathering, and being able to analyze all of these data and being able to communicate this data to be able to help management and board decisions. And so what we've done is that we've embedded it within the institutional architecture. And so it is not going to be a one-time thing that you do for a project or an activity, but within the system or within the operations of the organization, it is embedded, and relevant, competent people are recruited to be able to perform that function.
Thank you. Wonderful. So see, there are a lot of information and insights coming. Thank you very much. So I'd like to move on to the next set of questions. And this time around, maybe I'll start from Mr. Wafula, because I noticed he's talked a lot about development organizations' expectations and how it aligns with the expectations of the library systems. You know, these recommendations that we are talking about, it's not as if they don't come with concerns, is it not? Because we think so. So for instance, the case of trying to frame the work of libraries in the sense of attending to marginalized groups, or in the sense of communicating past successes and then the connections to the local communities. If you have a partner, because they are the source of the funding and all, does that not affect the independence of the work that a library system is supposed to do? These concerns, don't they raise issues? And what do you think should be the way around some of these issues? Maybe Mr. Wafula can talk about that. Hello, Mr. Wafula, are you there?
Sorry, I'm now unmuted. Okay. So Stanley, that's a very, very valid question, and a very, very important question. There is a saying that whoever holds the money makes the decisions.
Right.
So when we partner with this development partner, there are expectations on both sides. And these expectations have to be met. And as libraries in Africa, we have to be alive and we have to be realistic with the fact that the donors will come in, the development partners will come in, they probably expect you to make room for the particular projects or programs that they would like you to take on board. They expect you even to be flexible in terms of how and when to submit your reports, your status reports. How do you carry on your monitoring and evaluation tools, and so on and so forth. And I will share one example that we struggled with as an institution until we were able to find a solution. And this pertains to the procurement for various tools and activities necessary for implementation of this project. You reckon that procurement in government normally follows a very lengthy and bureaucratic process, where the emphasis is on fairness, is on competitiveness, and so on and so forth. So you get a development partner who is very specific. They tell you, we want you to procure goods from supplier A, we want you to procure services from supplier B, and so on and so forth. So it calls for a lot of flexibility. It calls for a lot of consensus building. It calls for a lot of seeding some of the grounds so that you're able to accommodate the needs and expectations of the development partner as well. So it's very, very important that you keep on having the discussion, you keep on engaging the development partner. Also try to look at the issues using their own lenses and understand them and see how can we fuse this and how can we strike for a win-win situation so that both parties come out of the relationship with smiling faces. So that's what I can say, touching on that particular point, Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Wafula. If Mr. Sian can touch on this other aspect with regards to the concerns that we observe, something that needs to be talked about. So in the case of documenting and disseminating this information, library data, impact data, and all that, you mentioned the issue about having an M&E section who is able to go through collecting data and analyzing and reporting and all that. For a library system that does not have this, that would obviously require either capacity building or bringing on board a lot more hands to do these jobs. And I think obviously this has a financial concerns. So in terms of this particular implementation or this recommendation, which you are saying is very feasible, what's the way around it where you realize that there is some bit of a shortness of capacity in terms of reporting, let's say, impact data and all, and yet you have resources that are very limited?
Yes, Stanley, no institution have got enough resources to do all that they think or they aspire to do. And so it depends on the institutions and your priorities. In Ghana, just limiting myself to Ghana, if we plan to do anything for next year, for example, you need to begin now to be able to work your way out, because for the Library Authority in Ghana, for example, our mother ministry is the Ministry of Education. And so the strategy we have adopted, because government will never give you enough money for all that you have to do. So what we have tried to do is to be able to work within the current architecture to be able to make sure that we are able to recruit the right people. For example, at the Library Authority right now, we are the only agency within the Ministry of Education of Ghana that has software developer team. And that is the question people ask, how did you build a software development team to be able to drive your technology agenda within the public library space, knowing that even your current scheme of service does not even allow you to be able to have an occupational group for software engineers? When we had the opportunity, because we are a very large institution with over 500 staff, and people go on retirement every year. And so when we had the opportunity to recruit new talent into the organization, what we did was that we strategically position ourselves to know that, okay, what are the key skills that we need to be able to drive our agenda over the next 10 years? And we recognize that key skills that we need is data. We need people that understand data to be able to bring them into this institution. And we need, technology savvy individuals to be able to work with us. And so you realize that most of the people that we recruited within the Library Authority, beside the information science professionals, we also had these very capable hands with respect to these skills area: research, monitoring, evaluation, technology. We managed to tap talent from these different pools to be able to pull them in the Library Authority. Then we build a learning culture within the organization where these talent that has come in are able to mentor other people and be able to teach other people within the institution so that they can be able to do the work for which we've not been able to hire any external people to even come and train them. And so if you have very limited resources, and I believe it is the same probably across the continent, where public libraries are very large and people retire every year. When people retire, I believe that it is time you begin to prioritize and look at what do you want your library to look like in the next 10 years? Are my current skill sets those that I need over that period? Why don't I recruit those skill sets to be able to replace those that are exiting from the institution and be able to drive the new vision that you want to carry your organization? And for us, we haven't received any big money with respect to capacity building, but it is because we brought in through this exit and replacement of staff approach, we've managed to bring this new skill set to be able to drive the agenda of the organization.
All right, wonderful, thank you. But I would like to put this question to Andrew more specifically. So looking at the recommendations generally, I think once there's that acknowledgement that there are some concerns that we need to find innovative ways to move around it such that the implementation of the recommendations become feasible. I would just like to understand from your point of view, what are the types of support that you need? Let's just bring up NLSA into the picture. What type of support do you think NLSA will need to implement these recommendations? This is at the very high level, just what you think NLSA in terms of support would require to implement the recommendations that the study has put forth. Andrew, please.
Okay, thank you, Stanley. Briefly, I want to say we will certainly need capacity support in terms of resources and ICT resources. I want to mention, for instance, the supply chain processes. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, especially that the government bureaucratic procurement system sometimes does not accommodate the partners' requirements. So despite that, we really need to make ways and means to ensure that we carry through the processes. And then the emphasis must, data collection also emphasize the role of libraries in development ecosystem. And also, I believe it will be able to convince the partners, the development partners. For instance, I want to share with you, Stanley and colleagues, that the National Library undertook impact assessment of libraries, countrywide throughout the 9 provinces. So we appointed an impact specialist to conduct the study, which is, I think it ended in March, end of financial year. And we are currently finalizing the report, the impact assessment report, that we are sure that it will be a weapon, as you asked us, that we'll use to be able to work with the necessary, to share with the necessary development partners. And lastly, I want to say also what we need to do is to digitize. I think digitization goes with going into the 4IR space. So we'll certainly need those support systems to ensure that we implement the recommendations. And also resource sharing mechanisms. If we get resource sharing mechanisms in place, with the more advanced and advanced partners, I'm sure that we'll be able to implement the recommendations. I thank you.
All right, thank you. We're running out of time. I just have one last set of questions for everybody. There's a question here from Jemima, but I'll tie that in with the next set of questions that I have. The question by Francisca, I have seen that how do donors normally want to sponsor public libraries? So how can private academic libraries also be supported? Your question is noted. I think for the purposes of this discussion, I would like to focus on what is being discussed at the moment, and probably would attend to these other questions at a later audience or at a later forum. But there's a question that is asking, how are you, in this case, SA, Ghana, Kenya, lobbying for more finances from government to ensure that libraries are recognized and funded? But I want to tie that in with the last set of questions that I have, because I think it fits in perfectly. What other recommendations, what other additional ideas or advice do you have sitting at where you are at the very pinnacle of library management within your countries? What other advice or ideas or recommendations do you have for libraries regarding partnerships, regarding making themselves more visible, regarding communicating and disseminating their impacts? Maybe I'll start with Mr. Wafula, and then next will be Mr. Hayford, and then Andrew will comment last. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. I have one recommendation that I would wish to pass to the panel and to AFLIA and all of us. And this is borrowed heavily from the experience we are having locally in Kenya. Okay. And this touches specifically on recommendation number 2 on the issue of data collection, on library usage and the demographics. There's a very big debate going on in Kenya right now about data protection laws. So in as much as we would wish to collect as much information as possible from our users, we have got to be very, very sensitive. And it's timely for us now to have a separate conversation. How do we adhere to the various data protection laws? Because gone are the days when we demand for information from our users. We've been collecting disaggregated data, for example, from users who come to our respective libraries on their age, their sex, their geographical areas of origin, and so on and so forth. But now people are telling you, I'm entitled to my privacy, I'm entitled to my secrecy, and so on and so forth. So we need to have this discussion, we need to have this conversation and see how best we can navigate this without necessarily infringing into the private spaces of the readers who come to our libraries. And how do we make the development partners aware that there are new and emerging areas of concern that we need to work together and see how best to navigate. Thank you, Stanley.
Exactly. Thank you. Right on point. Thank you, Mr. Wafula. Yeah, so Andrew, you want to share any additional recommendations or advice, or you want to re-highlight the point?
Yeah, certainly I want to re-highlight the point raised by Mr. Wafula and the legal limitations. You know, in South African situation, we have the POPI Act, Protection of Personal Information Act, that may really deter us from getting the necessary data. So data protection laws will really certainly be of big concern. And then I will quickly run through the other concerns. More ideas actually, more ideas that will make us more visible and also help us in attracting development partners. One, I want to say, let's explore digital technologies. For instance, let's develop library apps, and then let's make sure that libraries are moving into 4IR space. Also, let's share impact stories with development partners. The National Library has shared their stories, the impact stories on the IFLA map of the world, as well as a library portal, SC Libraries portal. So we have documented these impact stories so that we impress upon our development partners. We need to focus on ECD, actually, early childhood development programs through storytelling events and children's books. And then youth programs through poetry competitions, for instance, book club establishment workshops, support community publishing programs, literary events and outreach programs, establishment of library advocacy groups, establishment of labs for people with visual disabilities. Yeah, I want to share that in South Africa, we are establishing the mini libs with support from the South African Library for the Blind. The mini libs are intended to support people with visual disabilities, you know, to have access to Braille, etc., and to DAISY access, etc. And then we need to conduct ICT skills training. That is also imperative moving in ICT for our space. And then I want to conclude by saying digital literacy is critical to a wider literacy and development ecosystem. And lastly, the NGOs, let's partner with NGOs to provide mobile libraries, for instance, and book donations to communities.
All right, thank you. Then we would hear from Mr. Siao, your last comments, any additional recommendations or advice, or something you really need to call out for the purposes of the discussion, please.
Okay, I think there was a question with respect to how the Library of Ghana has been able to probably gotten some government support to be able to undertake its responsibility. And I think it's very fair that we address that question. So what we have done at the Library Authority is that we have 2016, 2017, there was a national development agenda. The national development agenda that was drafted did not have anything related to library. You can download the National Development Agenda and search for library, and you will not find a single library word. If you take all the political parties in Ghana, if you take their manifesto for the last election, you will only realize that it is only one political party that used one word library to even describe a digital platform they were going to set up. And so it is missing in the narrative of the political parties, and it is also missing in the narrative of the national development agenda. So what we did in 2018 was to be able to, push for the inclusion of something related to library within the education strategic plan, which was then approved by cabinet and has become my blueprint to be able to argue for more resources to be able to support the library. And that's how come the Ghana Education Service has to cede off some resources that was allocated to them for school libraries to be able to come to the Library Authority, because we have strategically made sure that within the Education Strategic Plan, that resources will be channeled to the Library Authority to be able to support school libraries. So it all depends on how, as your library institution, you are able to understand the policy discussions that are happening within your country and be able to find yourself within some policy framework that will help you to be able to ask for resources. Because every government drives its budget from its national development. Every ministry drives its budget from its policy document. And so if you are not, if you don't find yourself in there, then you kind of live by begging to be able to get resources. And that is what we have done at the Library Authority to be able to make sure we position ourselves for resources. And again, what we have done is to be able to use technology resources very effectively. When COVID-19 struck, at the Ministry of Education, we were the only agency that was well prepared to be able to host learning resources for Ghanaian learners in Ghana. Immediately, we were called in and be able to mobilize all learning tutorials that has been developed, video tutorials, some textbooks that were available were all given to us to be able to put on our mobile app. So in Ghana, wherever you are, you can be able to download the Ghana Library app on both your Android and your iOS. Significant to note that we've also partnered with Vodafone and MTN to zero rate it. So you do not have any excuse not to be able to have access to some of the learning resources that we have. And this is what has sort of positioned the Library Authority to be the organization that you can now not do without, because when you want to be able to send learning resources across to learners or to teachers in this country, you have to contact us, because we can host it on our learning resources and people can access it without paying for it. And this, for us, is for libraries, institutions to look into the future. What will be the demands? Because when we were developing all of this platform in 2019, we never had any idea that there was going to be something called COVID, which was going to change our role within the education space or within the library space. And I think it is important that we position ourselves in such a way that we become the go-to institution when it comes to connecting your citizens to knowledge resources. Because in Ghana, for example, we are competing with other institutions that had nothing to do with connecting Ghanaians to knowledge resources when it comes to their mandate set out by their law establishing them. But because we had been sleeping for probably a long time, these institutions were taking over our jobs. And now everybody is now recognizing our role and are coming to us for us to be able to work together to be able to connect our citizens to knowledge resources.
Right. Thank you. I think this is, if you like, information overload, ideas overload, actually. And I would advise and I would encourage that even after here, let's spend some time to re-engage the recordings of these panel discussions and subsequent webinars recordings on our AFLIA YouTube channel. There may be some ideas and insights that you might have missed, or you might need to rewatch to understand the concepts and where the panelists were coming from. So please, let's encourage ourselves to visit the AFLIA YouTube channel, get more information about this, rewatch. And I'm sure at the end of the day, the essence of this discussion is really to promote the conversations around improving library visibility, promote the conversations around enhancing library partnerships with development organizations, because we stand to gain when we're able to do this. So without much ado, I would really like to thank Mr. Wafula from Kenya, representing KNLS and the Eastern Africa. I would really like to thank Mr. Andrews Matlotti, also representing Southern Africa and South Africa. And then I would like to thank Mr. Hayford Sian, representing West Africa and Ghana. Thank you very much. We know you are very busy, but you made the time to make the discussion. Thank you for all the insights. Thank you for all the suggestions and additional recommendations. And we know that we would definitely have another opportunity to interact, if not on this subject, other pressing important subjects that will promote African librarianship. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for staying with us till now. We are just 32 minutes past the hour. We know that because of the conversation, we extended beyond because we needed everybody to benefit from all this wonderful information that was coming from the panel. So thank you for staying, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. If you have any questions, please, you can channel through aflia.com@aflia.net. You can also, if you need further information from the directors or the panel, with their consent, we can share their email addresses, but not now, later, if you care to request for them. But thank you very much. Have a great day. The rest of the webinar materials will be shared with all of you by email. When we upload it on YouTube, you will be notified. So thank you for today. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, bye, for the wonderful insight. It's amazing.
Bye-bye, everyone. It's really, really very insightful, very interesting, very engaging, and very thought-provocative. I've enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Okay. I will end the session in the next 1 minute.